One of the largest, if not the largest talking point surrounding the Bazaar right now is whether or not this is a PvE or PvP game. As in the latest update video, we got to see a step away from the 1v1 game we thought we might be getting, towards infinite player lobbies. So what is the Bazaar going to be? At its heart, the Bazaar is just a game. We don't necessarily need to ascribe labels to absolutely everything, or if we do, we don't necessarily need to have them define everything we do and say about something. Labels rarely tend to do something good, other than sort of help us put something in a box to help discriminate against it. Now, I'm not saying they can't be useful, and I'm not trying to get into a philosophical debate here, but I'm just saying, keep in mind, labels aren't everything. We can't just ascribe everything a box and put it there. Some things are a bit more than that. In fact, most things are. Now, I wanted to go ahead and do more videos on the ways Reynad and the team combat metagaming, introducing and focusing on you and what you're doing, etc, etc. But no, I've got to do this first. So, we take a look at the drama, although it's not really drama, from the Reddit. However, I don't want to get pulled into some dirty debate that just goes around in a huge cycle of people just coming out of every which way without any solid arguments per se. Don't get me wrong, everyone writes solid arguments. We all know how to write a solid argument, but a lot of this isn't backed with stats or experience, which is something we have to lean heavily on Reynad and their team for, because they've been developing the damn game. So I want to keep this discussion on topic. There has been so many drastic essays in Reddit, you don't need another one. So, back to my first point. Outside of labels, we do have gameplay to look at. So we can try to describe what the game will feel like, and then compare that to things that have already been labelled and boxed up. And I feel like that's what most people have been doing, but let's take a more objective look at it this way. There are lots of types of games throughout history. There are solo, sort of single player experiences. You have your 1v1 tennis match type of things. There are co-op games, which is basically solo plus a friend. You have your 2v2 sort of tennis doubles. There's 5v5, popularized by MOBAs and team shooters, thinking of like League of Legends and Dota and Overwatch and CSGO and that sort of thing. Then you go up to your 8v8 auto battlers. And then you've got your 50 plus versus battle royales, and many, many more. There are so many more that I just haven't named. However, these are the sort of major players in the market. They all play super differently, and that is a good thing. For example, they all apply to different players different ways. I find 8v8 a bit too disconnected for me. But I like an online experience to share, so I rarely play solo games anymore. I'm usually somewhere in the middle. I play a lot of 5v5 stuff, and yeah, some 1v1 stuff too. I am sort of your target audience for the Bazaar, I guess. Now, the 1v1. While we thought this is what we would be getting with the Bazaar, we were wrong. Maybe we're not okay with this. If you're not okay with this and you just want a 1v1 game, you still have Hearthstone. Reynad isn't going to delete Hearthstone with the Bazaar. As much as he wants to, we're definitely going to be taking some people across, I'm sure. But you can still go away and play Hearthstone, that's fine. Now, in the 1v1, there is always a winner and a loser. And as Reynad put himself, one player feels horrible and the other usually slightly good. That is a net bad feeling, and one of the many reasons why Reynad has tried to move away from the 1v1 format. This is also a game mode as old as time itself. Think of chess, or even in a more sort of physical format, sort of fencing duels. And if you go back even further, neighbourly disputes between farmers in the Middle Ages, or way back further. All 1v1s. Now, while being old isn't bad, it's been done to death, quite literally with Artifact having recently died. If you want a 1v card game, you have one. Go and pick one of those. But with the Bazaar, Reynad and the team are really trying to innovate, and I cannot help but be excited for that. So, what about 8v8? Now, I could cover all of the various types I mentioned, 5v5 MOBAs and shooters, for example, etc., but they don't really apply. 8v8, however, is where we find auto battlers. The team from the Bazaar have taken big inspirations from this, and also tried to develop on some of the things that auto battlers already did. Ben pointed out that they are the most successful recent strategy game, so why not innovate from those? And with that in mind, do we just have basically an expanded 8v8? Is that what we're getting? Well, in this 8v8 style, like I said, I feel a little bit disconnected. That's why I haven't played too much of Dota Underlords as my particular pick, because I'm a Dota person, not a League person. If you dislike me for that, fair enough. However, in the 8v8, a win feels great, and a loss is fast, but you can queue up again soon after, and it's going to be a distant memory. However, a mid-pack finish is kinda meh. You spend a little while building up, maybe you had a chance at glory, but you're still technically lost. There's also just too much going on in these 8v8s. How are you supposed to interact with the world and even other players while re-rolling your entire board in 30 seconds? One of the major criticisms that the Bazaar currently has is that people are concerned about the lack of player interaction, and they can liken it to these sort of auto-battler 8v8s, and how often do you really get to interact with the other players? Sure, you might try and buy the stock of the hero or god or whatever they want, but that's kind of it, and I wouldn't really call that interaction. You could easily replace those 7 people with bots and it would feel exactly the same. I feel like the Bazaar team probably spent at least a while thinking on, or at least testing maybe, 8v8 types of matchmaking, but in the end it just didn't fit the game. It checked very few boxes, it doesn't feel Bazaar-y, turn timers are too limiting, and metas still develop with relative ease and become a problem within those systems. These are all things that the Bazaar wanted to fix. So does that make Battle Royale the answer? A large number of people go into a game and compete, so I can kind of see where people were getting with that. Saw a couple of people likening it to Warzone and other Battle Royales. It is certainly closest in terms of scale, which the setting dictates we need, right? This is an intergalactic Bazaar, you should be surrounded by a lot of people, mostly players, some NPCs. So we need this sort of large-scale game. It does remove turn timers by setting a sort of general expiry on the match, with a storm or something like that coming in to ensure the game does end at a good time, but it's still not quite perfect in terms of how a card game would work. This works nicely for shooters because people have to make split-second decisions anyway, and if you don't, you die. End of your round, go next. In a card game, death is a little bit slower than that usually, so there's a need for turn timers and, by extension, a need for a different solution other than Battle Royales if you want to get rid of them. However, there are some other similarities. You focus on your own build, for example, collecting resources, and you eventually go head-to-head with other players. And that does sound like a Battle Royale to me, and also like the Bazaar, but it's not quite it. A Battle Royale is normally a fight to the death with a single winner, whereas the Bazaar has many winners. Each day you come into the Bazaar, someone else will go home a victor, someone else will go home a loser, but there won't just be one. The Bazaar also doesn't have a lobby at all. You aren't all completing in one single event for your run. This isn't just like a single server where 50 people log in and one person leaves. Every battle of your run is basically a new game, a new lobby. So this only really leaves solo play as the answer then. A game you play by yourself, on your own time, with absolutely zero concern at all for the wider player base. And this is, again, as I say, one of the largest criticisms that the Bazaar has right now, and I don't necessarily think it's completely unjustly. But continue with me here. Is it necessarily a terrible thing if it has single player elements? We will continue, but I will at least give you that much. There are probably single player elements in this game. For example, one of its hugest inspirations is Slay the Spire, and that has definitely had an effect on the game. Throughout the day cycle, you, in your own time and by yourself, in a single-player-esque mode, buy cards from NPCs and battle a monster. Sounds like a solo RPG to me so far. But it's the purpose of these stages that makes the Bazaar so much more than a solo or single-player game. For example, in Skyrim, you aren't building a sneaky bow user because it's the best strategy you could put together from the items you found to beat the other Dragonborn who will be on a similar power level who are waiting for you around the corner. You did it because it was fun and easy, and to beat the NPCs who are likely lower level anyway, and you had plenty of time to go and fetch whatever. It just doesn't compare. In the Bazaar, you build up your strategy to become the king of sandcastle builders. All other components will have the same tools and can reach the same goal. but they are all human. There is no telling what a human will try, so you have to outsmart the outsmartiest with your strategy. In Skyrim, you just abuse the stealth mechanics on dumb NPC mobs who just forget you're there 2 seconds after you killed a guy. It's not the same. So, the Bazaar isn't a 1v1 or an 8v8, and while it borrows from single player and battle royale games, it isn't strictly either. So, what is it? Hear me out, because this might sound a little bit crazy for some of you, having read your Reddit comments. But the Bazaar is a new type of game. Some might call it PvEVP, but that isn't quite it either, because it's a strategy game and inherently makes you think about the human opponent at the very end, while you play with the NPCs to build your deck, not necessarily against them. I'm sure somewhere down the line someone will come up with a fancy double-barreled name for it that pops and sells to markets or whatever. But for now, I call it the Bazaar. It's coming out soon, and regardless of how or who you play, it looks fun. So give it a go. Now, if you've enjoyed this content, if you're looking forward to the Bazaar, do drop this a like and a subscribe, because I can keep you posted on all of the Bazaar news and all of the Bazaar information that's coming out. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Ciao.